is we try to get you focused on making yourself the very best manager you can be so that you can take your knowledge and share it with your subordinates because you want them to be every bit as good as you. That way you don't have to worry about what they're doing in their jobs. Does that make sense? So we talked about you setting goals. We talked about you learning how to organize yourselves, create plans, and take action, staffing and leading. What we're going to do now is we're going to get into the actual practice of creating budgets in this type of environment, this channel of business. So we're going to talk about the profit planning. What we're going to do is we're going to talk about creating an overall budget for a year for a particular facility, and we're going to then talk about what are the parameters that will make that business successful on the financial side. So most of what we've talked about to this point is about you and service techniques. Now we're going to start talking about financial techniques. What I have in my hand is a request for information for the University of Illinois. The University of Illinois has recently put out the rights to do business in their concession operations at their stadiums, arenas, soccer fields, baseball fields. The athletic department wants an outside party to come in and manage their facilities for them. You see how thick this is? It is a professional document that is available to anybody. As a matter of fact, they sent this to me and asked me to start my own company and bid on this contract. I don't have the time, and at my age, it would take a lot of energy, but I was honored that they included me. But the reason I said me is not because of any prowess, it's because they send it out to almost everybody. So as a matter of fact, Ariel, I can hand this to you. You could read it, follow the instructions, and turn in a proposal. Does that make sense? And if you had the best proposal, they could select you. Kevin, they could select you. They could select Sports Service or Sodexo or Centerplate. They basically will get a number of different proposals back and try to select the one that fits best. Now, this ties in directly with what your semester project is. And I have several of them up here, and they're all in different formats. But I want you to create your own, and I want you to follow those instructions. And the way to do it is to basically learn what we're going to talk about in profit planning, event planning, menu development, the next exercises, cost controls, and create your own plan. This was Joanna Bernardini. Anybody know Joanna?
That name sounds so familiar.
She did a great job. She created a business plan for the Edinburgh Castle in Scotland.
When did she graduate?
16. And then we had Becky Thurman. Anybody know Becky Thurman? She created a business plan for Universal Studios in the Harry Potter section of Universal Studios. We had Terry Flanagan. She created Animal House Zoo and Gardens. So
She's awesome.
Yeah, she's a sweet lady. Ashik and a team created a business plan to open a restaurant. So you can see each one of these is different, more detailed or less detailed. So this is a graduate program right here. But you guys should be able to do this at the end of the year. Now, I didn't bring any that were less than acceptable because I didn't want you to see what I would call inferior plans. Does that make sense? So I tried just to bring the best. If you wanted to take your cell phones and take photos of these so that you know what you're supposed to do and turn this in by May 1st, you'll know what to do. All right, so if we talk about profit planning, let me see if I can get this right here. We're really going to talk about an annual forecast for sales. And it really breaks down into 6 different steps. But the reality is, the reason I start this whole class with goals, remember the first week, you had to create 5 goals. If you aim at nothing, you'll hit it every time. If you don't have a vision, if you don't see what the end product should be, then you won't ever know if you hit it or not. What we're going to do is we're going to base everything that we do going forward on what I call evidence-based decision making. So, if we're going to start talking in terms of the University of Illinois, and in here, they're going to have all kinds of documents. But we want to know what the historical data is. We want to know how many home football games they have. We want to know the average attendance. We want to know how many basketball games they have. We want to know if they do on-campus concerts. We want to know if they have concerts, can we sell alcoholic beverages? All of these things are what we call historical data. Then you want to find out, is the information you have reliable, and do you have the proper quantity and quality of data? So for example, in this particular case, because it's a state document, it's going to have listed in here prior schedules. It's going to have what the menus have been in the past. It's going to have annual attendance. And it's going to tell us some specifics. Because it's a state document, it's going to be reliable. As opposed to, I call Kevin, because Kevin is at the University of Illinois. Hey Kevin, you ever go to any football games? Oh, well, he's a bad example. But play along with me, okay?
Yes.
Yeah. How many people go to most of the games, Kevin?
I'd say half the stadium.
Half the stadium, okay? Stadium seats 65, so I'm going to guess 32,000. This is what I'm doing in my mind, okay? Then I'm going to say, Kevin, do people buy a lot of food at the stadium?
If I'm more alcohol.
Is any of this that I'm going through right now reliable?
Ridiculous.
Probably not,
Yeah.
okay? So you would want to know some things like, hey, Kevin, you go to the games. What's the one thing you could improve?
Lines at the bathroom.
Lines at the bathroom, okay? Does that help me as a food service guy? No. But what he could say is lines at the concessions. I don't think they have enough concession stands. That'd be important information for me to know from a customer standpoint or somebody that goes to the games. So you do want to get a lot of information, and you want to talk to people who frequent the facilities. For example, Jessica, you go to the, your dad is a huge donor at the University of Illinois, right? And he has a skybox. And you go to the skyboxes, right?
Yeah.
What do you think about the food at the skybox? Is it good? Could it be improved? It could be improved. And how would you improve it?
Usually when I get my food, it's not at the right temperature.
Oh, it's a little cold. It's not the right temperature. Very good. Thank you. So what that would tell me is that I might need to invest some money in warmers or chafing dishes or some way to keep all the skybox food warm. Do you like the menu selection? Is it varied from game to game, or is it the same thing?
It could be
Is it prime rib or is it meatballs? Hi, how are you?
Frazzled.
All right, and then finally, do you leverage that technology for improved accuracy, a deep business knowledge, and does it help you make real-time decisions? That's what evidence-based decision-making is about. That's why you have to research this stuff. Back in the 60s and 70s, people would not do this, okay? They would walk into the University of Illinois and they would go to a bid meeting and they'd say, I'm a whole lot smarter than Kevin, and I'm a whole lot smarter than Jessica, and I'm a whole lot smarter than Rachel, and I know I can do a better job. And they did $1 million in sales last year. I can do $2 million without looking at the schedule, without looking at any of the parameters, the details.
Ambitious.
Yeah, egotistical, okay? All right, so we're going to talk in terms of budgeting for stadiums, coliseums, arenas, movie theaters. You can have zoos, amusement parks. And what I'm really doing is I'm going to start referring to the book now on page 88. It's chapter 3. And in this chapter in the back, there are going to be 2 case studies. One for a football stadium and one's going to be for an ice hockey arena. Okay? Like a municipality. Now, here are the competitive advantages through by knowing the financial performance in advance. See, well-constructed budgets turn out to be the roadmap for your business. They tell you what you can spend and what you can't spend. Management intelligence is to better understand the parameters of the business. So, for example, University of Illinois, is their stadium indoor or outdoor?
Outdoor.
The outdoor stadium. Why would that be important to me? Weather, exactly. So if we talked about the Mercedes-Benz Dome in Atlanta, is it indoor or outdoor?
Indoor.
Indoor. Why is that important?
It's hot.
Because we have controlled temperatures. If I talk about baseball, and I talked about Yankee Stadium in New York, what typically is the temperature in New York in April? Cold and chilly, right? And it's outdoors. Are they going to buy food or not? If we go to some place like Houston, and we look at the Houston baseball facility, it has a dome. How many times are they going to get rainouts? None. So you know they're going to have at least 82 games at home. If I'm in Cincinnati and I'm at the Great American Ballpark, it's an outdoor facility, I have to plan for rain date. I can't say that we're going to have 82 home games. Okay. Budgets are the operational process or procedure that drives the decision making. Okay, remember this. You'll probably hear it 100 times in your lifetime. Poor planning on your part doesn't constitute an emergency on my part. Then when I was at Auburn University, we got the contract in August, but the budgets that we did were for an entire year. That makes sense? So August is what? 8th month? So January through July we had no sales. But if we construct a budget like we're going to do here today, then you would find, uh-oh, at the end of the year, we had all the startup costs, but we only had half a year's worth of sales. What happened? What happened? Anybody want to guess?
Will you repeat yourself?
Sure. So here I am. I'm presented with one of these proposals for Auburn University. We make the bid. They select us to operate the stadium. Our contract date starts August 1st. I'll say 1993, just for giggles. Right. Our fiscal date ends December 31st. How many months did we operate? August, September, October, November, December. 5 months. How many months in a year? Yeah, so I was only 5/12 of sales. But the budget was built for what? An entire year. So what do you think happened to the sales? Did they meet expectations? No, they were short, right? So my boss calls me into the office and he says, Larry, we fell short on the budget by $200,000. Explain yourself. I said, well, boss, here's the deal. It's not a fair comparison because we built the budget on an annual basis. We only have 5 months, and we had all the startup cost in August. So you have front-end loaded expenses, and you don't have a year's worth of sales yet. So I was kind of on probation at that point. The following year, our sales exceeded by $400,000. What happened then? Boss calls me into the office. He said, damn, you're good. Now, am I really good?
Or you had all that extra money from the previous year.
I didn't have the expenses in year 2 that I had in year 1 for startup, right? And I had a full calendar year. And we did increase sales. And the other component that he didn't take into account was it was the year that Auburn went undefeated. They were 12-0. And when a team goes undefeated, every seat's sold and everybody buys twice as much stuff because they love the team and they want to be a part of the process, the celebration. Okay? So you have to be careful. Poor planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on my part. All right. There are 6 basic steps when you start to create a budget. If you look on page 88, you'll see that the first one is you establish a format. So, Asha, can you help me here?
Yep.
Now, typically the format has nothing to do with operations. The chief financial officer will start the format process. And the format process usually always starts with sales first. Everything we do going forward, talking about business, you're going to start with sales first. Okay? And we can break that down into, like, say, football and basketball. We can break it down into catering, concessions. I can say beer and wine or alcohol. And we get total sales. That's how the format starts. The next piece is going to be what we call cost of sales, COS, or cost of goods, COG. You'll hear a lot of people talk about cost of goods. All right, so this is going to be what does it cost us for our food? Okay. We're going to subtract cost of goods from total sales, and we're going to end up with what we call gross profit. Gross profit is not profit. Why not? Caroline, you're late. I'm going to start picking it.
Why is
Gross profit, not the true profit.
Because it's before taxes are taken out.
It is that, yes. Look at something more important. What's missing?
The expenses,
What kind of expenses?
operational and
Operational expenses, exactly. So you don't have any labor cost in here. You don't have uniform expense. You don't have advertising. You don't have any of those. Pest control, trash pickup, all of those expenses fall down here. Then you end up with what we call net profit before taxes. Okay? So what I passed out to you is a format that is generally accepted. The only reason I pass it out in that format is because if I put it on the screen, it's hard to read. So we're going to create a format first. The next piece is forecast sales, and then we're going to forecast cost of sales. So that piece of paper should look like this screen. And like I just wrote on the board, this happens to be a movie theater. So we have adult admissions, we have sales and concessions, we have any rentals, amusement games like video games, any miscellaneous expenses or sales. So for example, why would we have a negative number here in sales? How can you have a negative number in sales?
says that you haven't sold more than you spent.
No? Marley, this is right up your alley because you always say, gosh, you always make me think outside the box. This right here is gift card redemption. So up here, I sold gift cards. Down here, I redeemed a gift card. So for example, at Malco, in December, we might sell $200,000 worth of gift cards. That money's not used. It's used here and here and here. So these are redeemables. Does that make sense? So that's how you end up with a negative. So if you go into business in a stadium, you have to remember that just because you sell the gift cards in August, that they could use all, football season, doesn't mean that they're not going to come back and get their money back. I've seen a lot of companies make mistakes like that. They think, oh my gosh, our sales are so good in December. Look what we've done. And then all of a sudden the money starts to whittle back away. That makes sense? Okay. So sales first, then cost of sales. So in this particular case, you have film rentals, you've got food cost. When I was with management companies, managed stadiums, the food cost, we didn't have film commissions, we had food costs, but we would break it down as far as meats, dairy, dry goods, beer, wine, alcohol. We had all kinds of different categories in here. Why did we do that? Why did we do that, Ariel? Why couldn't we just put food cost? I mean, that, right? It's the same thing, right?
Because you need to know how much you're spending on each product.
Exactly. So if there ends up, you're going to find out later, we're going to figure out what the theoretical food cost is. And if my food cost is off, I want to go back and look and see what area is this problem happening in. Is it in keg beers? Is it in bottled beer? Is it in like vegetables? Like lettuce, tomatoes, onions? So the chief financial officer will break these categories down. Then you have gross margin. Remember what I said, gross margin. So in this particular case, in January, we're going to make $208,000 before we pay expenses. Then you've got newspaper ads, radio, TV, salaries for the management or theater operations, salaries for concessions, security, payroll taxes. People forget payroll taxes all the time. They don't put them in their budgets. Health insurance, any budgets for pensions. And then you have a couple of different types of costs. I call them controllable or non-controllable, or you have semi-variable expenses or direct expenses. What's the difference between controllable and non-controllable expenses?
Controllable expenses are expenses that you have no control over, like rent.
That's non-controllable.
Or, wait.
So let's talk like this. Let's say that we have fixed and variable expenses. What would be a fixed expense?
Fixed is when it's the same amount coming out every month,
That's exactly right, and you have no control.
no control.
So for example, if I set up a contract to pick up my trash, and I'm gonna pay the guy $300 a month to bring the dumpster guy out there and he gets all the trash out 3 times a week.
And that's not changing.
And it doesn't matter if I do $10,000 worth of business or $1 million worth of business, I'm paying that set amount each month. Fixed, non-controllable, I have no control over it, okay? Variable expenses, what's a variable expense?
Labor,
Labor, very good. Why is it controllable?
because you can send people home.
Yeah, so you're used to that, yeah. What else?
It's a cost that goes up and down as sales fluctuate.
No, not necessarily. It'd be like utilities. So for example, we could leave the lights on all night, okay, now turn them off, the utility bill's gonna be higher. But if we use conservation, we can cut back on that particular expense. Uniforms, is that controllable or non-controllable? If you're providing uniforms for your employees, controllable or non-controllable?
Control.
I feel like that, well,
Is it a thing to where they return the uniform after they leave, or you have to continue
Yes.
to buy? Okay, then it would be controllable, right?
Controllable, why did you say controllable?
Because
You said
they're-
one thing, but your mind is looking like it's thinking something else.
Well, wouldn't it be controllable if you're getting the uniforms back? You're just reusing the same uniform.
Sort of, kind of. But uniforms wear and tear at different rates, right?
Right.
So if I'm a grill cook and I'm getting grease all over my chef coat and I have to replace those on a regular basis, I'd like to have somebody that was a little more sanitary and didn't screw up their uniform all the time. That make sense? And so that's kind of a controllable expense. What about office supplies? Controllable, non-controllable?
non-controllable.
Yeah, non-controllable.
No.
Well, if you buy them in bulk, right?
You're gonna buy it, but how much paper do you put in the copier? So you need to make a report for school and you go into the office and you print it on the office machine. Pens and paper, rubber bands, paper clips. So you can set a budget that says, okay, all I'm gonna spend this year is $2,000 on office supplies. But if you manage it very carefully, maybe you only spend $1,500 because you don't have to buy so many staples or staplers or toner for, that make sense?
I thought people that worked in offices would buy their own supplies.
No, not
I didn't
in
know.
most cases. If you come to work at Malco, we have to give you rubber bands and paper clips. That's an office expense. Does that make sense? We need
Yeah.
you to make copies of reports and fax them or scan them and send them to the office. That's not on you. Okay, so all of that can be what I call
So y'all
variable.
provide the basics, and if, yeah.
Yeah, and if you want a Mont Blanc pen to write with, that's your business,
buy
but
it.
I'm buying Bic for the office. And if you give every person a big pen, let me ask you this, how many people work in the restaurant business here? Do they supply pens for you, or do you have to buy your own?
Some do, some don't.
Yeah, because I see you guys running around, you got like 8 pens in your pocket, right?
Mhm.
And they all match, so I know that wasn't you buying
And you
those.
lose them.
Yes, or they take
Lose
them,
them all
right?
day.
Never take a
them.
pen from a server. That's so rude.
I hate that.
Or if
I'll
you take a
do this.
pen, you leave a pen.
There's
That's
some
why I
places-
just make sure I.
There's
give
some
them a
places though that
copy.
Yeah,
advertise,
no, I
like
keep
Bobble,
my
they
pens in.
have pens that have their name on it, and
Sure.
I worked there for a short time, and they were like, you want people to take these pens,
Yeah.
because
In that
that's advertising.
instance.
Yeah.
In that instance
yeah,
where they're
right.
providing something.
Right,
and
Yeah.
they
right, but that
consider
might fall underneath this category here, advertising someplace. Does that make sense? Because you're doing that. So that does make sense.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so what we're talking about here is format. All right. Now, after we establish the format, the next 3 steps are we're going to forecast labor, direct expenses, and then finally we're going to have a summary. We're going to pull all this together so that we end up learning what we can or cannot bid or expect for profitability on any particular account. All right, so remember, format, we've already talked about this, sales are 100% at all times. And we're going to decide this. We're going to decide what our sales are based on some specific data that we already have. All right, step 2, forecasting sales. Very important. Remember this. This is the foundation for everything else we do for the next 2 weeks. The way you figure your sales is you assume the attendance and you multiply it times the per cap. Per cap stands for per capita income, or money per person. In restaurant business, you might call it check average. Okay? In international terms, they say spend per person. But we're gonna use the term per capita. So let's do the math. I told you guys that you need to bring your laptops going forward. We're gonna start creating Excel files. And if you create Excel files, you won't make mistakes. If you don't bring an Excel file, at least bring a calculator of some sort, like your cell phone. In this particular case, sales, football. What's the first thing we need to know?
Attendance.
Attendance for football this year is going to be 50,000. And I know that the per capita is $21 per person for NFL games. How do I know what my sales are for football?
Your ticket sales?
No?
Your,
Multiply the
I don't know how it is, but every class, am I right, Ashley? Every class, I lose the class right here. How do you figure sales?
You multiply attendance by per cap.
Thank you.
okay.
See? What's the attendance?
50,000.
Times what?
21.
21.
So, do that for me. Calculators, ladies, gentlemen. It's going to be 1,000,005. Now we know what football is. We could track this with basketball. We could figure catering, concessions, beer, whatever. But that's how we start with labor cost.
So just to clarify one more time, what's per capita, like per cap?
Per cap is spending per person.
Spending per person.
All right, Ashley, will you help me? Now, I'm passing out a sheet, but it's the same as page 99 in the book. And if you look at page 99 in the book, you can see that column 1 is the type event. So what's the type of event that I put over there first?
Football, soccer.
Okay, and then how many number of event days?
1.
So far, it's just 1. Okay, good, Kevin. What's the average attendance, Kevin?
50,000.
Yeah. So what would the total attendance be?
50,000.
Right. It'd be 1 times 50,000. What's the per cap?
21.
21. And so the total sales are going to be the total attendance times the per cap, or $1,050,000.
What is
Alright.
that projected sales?
Yeah.
Okay.
So if we go back a little bit further, I think I want to help you out here. There are 2 case studies in the book. One is case study A, and one is case study B. Let's see. And that's page 122. Nope. Nope, sorry. My bad. Let's break even. Where are we at here? It's page 93. So, I would like for you to take the form that you have that Ashik passed out, okay, the paper form. And for the online students, if you just wanted to make a copy of that page, Form A, you could write on that. I prefer to leave the book unwritten on. That way, if you ever want to go back in your history, you can use this same technique. For example, when I was at the dog track in West Memphis, Southland Greyhound Park, I figured out how many days, event days we would have. And I would put in the average sales or the average attendance for each day. So I would have a heavy day, and it might be, 10,000 people. And then we'd have a medium day, and that might be 7,000 people. And a slow day might be 5,000 people. And then there might be some special event days where we have Memorial Day or the 4th of July or Labor Day, big event days. We would put those in. So you can use this in movie theaters, for example. When I talk in terms of movie theaters, I don't have event days. What I do is I put down a Monday, a Tuesday, a Wednesday, a Thursday, a Friday, a Saturday. Holidays such as Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. And so then we can say the average attendance on Mondays is 300. On Tuesdays, it's 350. On Wednesdays, it's 275. Fridays, it's 1,500. Saturdays, it's 3,000. Sundays, it's 2,000. Make sense? So you can use this same format in any kind of business. That make sense? So that's why I don't want you to write on your book. You may want to go back to this someday because you're going to be smarter than your boss when we're done with this. You're going to be surprised. All right, let's look at page 93. So it basically tells us, under Roman numeral number 2, that we're talking about a facility. It's a 60,000 seat open air stadium in my city. And it provides concessions and vending service, no catering. Now here's number 3, the event schedule. So let's all do this together. Take your pen, fill out the events. That'd be column number 1. We have pro football. If you want to put PF so you don't have to write so much, do that. CB for college ball. S for soccer. C for concerts and other. Column 2, event days. How many football games do we have? Fill it in.
For football? Or for all of them? All of them?
Fill them all in, yep. College ball 5, soccer 15.
No, wait. College ball, 5, soccer, 15.
I'm hoping you're looking at your book. Page.
Oh, okay, cool.
Concerts 5, other 5. What's the next step?
Average attendance.
Right. Now you have to do the math. So what is 10 times 50,000? 500,000. 5 times 15,000. I think it's 75. Am I correct?
This is total attendance.
This is total attendance, right. So again, what we're doing is much like I put here, this is the event, okay? But I didn't put in the event schedule, how many events we had. So if we had football in this particular case, there are 10 home games, it'd be 10 times 50,000. Then we'd have total attendance, it's going to be 500,000. And then the per cap was $21. We're going to multiply 500,000 times 21 eventually. So we're doing each column. We've listed the events. We know how many events in each category. We know average attendance now in each category. To figure out total, we're going to multiply number of events times average attendance. That tells us total event attendance for that category. So do we have any Math majors, economic majors, people that use Excel? You don't?
I actively am terrible.
Do you
at
know
Excel.
anything about Excel?
Just
I know
bad
about
at it.
Excel. I mean, I can manage it.
Yeah, I can manage it, I'm just not.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah.
set up your own spreadsheets?
I can like
Yeah.
flip columns.
Yeah. So what you would do is,
That's hard.
you would have, I'll say column A over here, then you'd have column B, right? Then you'd have column C. Well, column D is going to be B times C equals D, okay? On your format, or in your book, it tells you exactly how to do that at the bottom of the page, where it says instructions. All right, Kevin, how far along are you?
I'm doing the projected sales right now.
Okay, let's do attendance first. So we've done all these things. Let's see if I can help me remember. We had football, college basketball. What was next?
Soccer.
Soccer. Then what did we have?
Concerts.
Concerts and others. Okay. I'm going to erase some of this. All right. So we're going to add up this column right here. How many events do we have? 40 events? Good. And then what's the total attendance? You need to add up that column.
Total attendance for which column?
The entire year. So we know that football is going to be 500,000. We know the college ball is going to be, I think, 75,000. What is soccer?
300,000.
Soccer's 300,000? Okay. And then concerts,
360.
360. And then what is other?
250.
250. So what I want you to do is add up the 500, the 75, the 300, the 360, the 2. These numbers here look too high to me.
I got 300,000 for concerts. That's 5 times 60.
Yeah, 300,000.
That's right. So concerts is 5, and it's times 60. Should be 300,000, right?
It's 300.
And then soccer, how many soccer games?
15.
15. And the attendance?
Or 300,000. 20,000 for average.
Okay. That looks right. And then other was what? 5 concerts and 50,000?
Mm-hmm.
So what's this number here for total attendance in the year? 1.4?
I cleared it from my calculator.
Oh, that doesn't look good.
1.425.
Yeah.
1.425. I should have known that. That's how many people are going to come to the facility in a year. Well, that's what we're projecting. We have 40 events. What's the average attendance? How do you figure the average attendance? So you don't add up all of these and divide by 5. You're going to take this total attendance and divide it by 40. So divide that by 40, and that tells us kind of what we're going to have each event as an average. What did you get for that, Jessica?
35,625.
How much?
35,625.
So if we've done this, what do we do next? We're going to multiply these by the per capita. In the book, does it tell you what the per capitas are?
Yes.
So it'd be 21 for football, 950 for soccer, concerts,
670.
650 for soccer, concerts, 18, and other 7.
You're
Soccer's,
multiplying them?
soccer is 6.75.
6.75 for soccer.
Yeah. 18 for concert,
18 for concerts.
and then 950 for.
So 21
College
for
ball.
pro football. What was basketball? 9 something? What was basketball?
950,
Yeah, 950.
and you're multiplying it by the per capita.
Let's go back. What is the very foundation? What was the first thing I told you you had to do?
Attendance
Attendance. What's the second thing?
per cap.
Per cap. How do we find sales?
Multiply the two.
Yeah,
That's right.
multiply them.
So to you, you just asked the question, is this where we multiply? Yes. 500,000 times $21. It's gonna be 10,500,000, I think.
No, it's this.
Am I right? Who's lost? Somebody's lost.
Sorry, I'm just.
you're right.
This is good. We're gonna be better off if we stop now, then you let me keep going on, and then you're not gonna know what's going on next
Well,
week.
how I do it is like I'm going across, like,
That's right,
so I got
You go
40
all
for
the
the
way
number of
across.
days.
right?
The average event, you got, but for that, for the projected sales,
Uh-huh.
have you done that yet?
No.
Okay, that's
where
what
we're
my
getting.
confusion
That's where we're
was.
at.
Yeah,
That's what we're
that's what we're trying to figure right now.
So what's the, 1,425,000?
That's the number of
That's the
people that are gonna
total
come.
attendance.
So,
Total attendance?
what column is that?
That's column 4.
Column 4.
4-letter A is.
This is column number 4 right here, total attendance. Average attendance is 3. Number of events is 2.
Do you add the average attendance?
No.
You don't?
So, Marley, let's go through this again. So far, you've done everything right. You don't quite understand, so let's be sure you understand. We need to know the number of days. We need to know the average attendance. If we multiply the days times the average attendance, it tells us how many people are going to come all
Total
year.
attendance.
Good, got it so far.
And then,
So what we're going to do is we're going to do that for all 5 categories, okay? What we do here is we just want to know how many days are we going to be working. 40, right? How many people are going to come to the facility this year? Well, we know we've got 5 different types of events, and some days are going to be busier than others. So football looks like it's going to be pretty busy. But we're going to add all that up, and we know that we've got 1,425,000 people coming to our facility this year. Then we're going to look at, well, if that's the case, how many people average coming to the events? So you take this number divided by the total days. So that's where you get this. This really doesn't have any bearing other than if somebody said, well, what's your average attendance? Well, for this facility, it's about 36,000. Now, if they said, what is your average attendance for football? What would you say?
you would do the football
Which
divided
is?
by 10.
That's right.
It would be 500,000 divided by 10.
That's correct.
Okay.
Exactly. Or 50,000 because it's already right here, average attendance.
Okay, I think I'm good now. I just,
Okay.
you were a little bit ahead
Yep.
of
We
me,
were a couple
so.
steps behind.
So
So now that we know what this number is, we want to know sales. And Ariel told us that it's attendance times per capita. So we're going to do that for each event going across. That makes sense?
attendance times per capita.
So we're going to do 500,000 times $21.
Okay.
That's 10,500,000. Okay, y'all are going to help me now. Kevin, 75,000 times 950 is how much?
712,500.
712
Yeah.
and 500.
Yes.
Okay. Marley, it's your turn. 300,000 times the per capita for soccer. What's the per capita?
It's 2,025,000.
2,025,000.
Double check that one more time.
Okay.
Yes.
Caroline, what is concerts?
5,400,000.
You guys aren't as far behind as I thought. Jessica, what is other?
Other. There is $1,750,000.
Here's the question that's going to be on the test. At this facility, what do we expect annual sales to be? What do we expect annual sales to be?
All of it.
All of them added up. That's exactly right. So you're going to add the 10 million plus the 700,000 plus the 2 million plus the 5 million plus the 1.7 million, and you're going to give me a number. And I think it's 19 something.
It's 20,387,000.
20 million 380
87,000.
even?
Yep.
That can't be right.
I got 20,387,500.
That sounds more like it because you see the 500 right here?
Oh, yeah.
That's how I knew you were
So that's total projected sales.
Right.
Okay.
So, since we're having so much fun, you get this proposal in the mail. You take it to your boss, the president of the company, and you say, boss, University of Illinois is out for bid, and I think there's an opportunity for us to make some money. Can I follow through on the process? What do you think his first question is going to be?
Well, what are your total projected sales?
Exactly. That's the first question he's going to ask. And what are you going to say, Marley?
Well, sir, 20,387,500.
That's exactly right. And then he's going to think, gosh, you know, we have Ole Miss, and we do $10 million at Ole Miss. Would this be a good account to chase?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why?
More money.
It's twice as much as your biggest account, right? So here you are. You already sound sharp and like you know what you're talking about.
And if you watch like Shark Tank,
Yep.
that's the first question they ask.
They want to know numbers.
Yeah.
Is what are your projected sales?
Yeah. Yeah. There's a book out by Steve Jobs. And I think the name of it is The Marketing Rockefeller Habits. Mastering Rockefeller Habits. And there are 3 key components in there. The first one is alignment with corporate values. But the third one is know your numbers. So you have, if you're going to get into any kind of business like this, you're going to have to know your numbers. All right, so it's 10:30, and I'm going to suggest we take a 7-minute break, and you're going to come back at 10:40.